Crypto trading is becoming more accessible for more people. It's easy to do, and there are no meaningful regulations that prohibit just about anyone from logging on into a crypto trading exchange website, creating an account with little to no KYC or know your customer checks, wiring money to fund your account, and off you go. You're now a crypto trader. Your account and the crypto in it are held on the exchange. In fact, everyone that has an account also has their crypto stored with the exchange, making the exchange a centralized exchange. And this is the problem. You see, hackers know that by breaching a centralized exchange's security, they can take a whole lot of crypto that the exchange is holding. And there are numerous cases where centralized exchanges do indeed get hacked and people lose their crypto. Enter Switcheo. Switcheo is an exchange, but it's a decentralized exchange. Decentralized meaning you are free to make trades without the risk of losing your crypto should the exchange get hacked. And that's because Switcheo does not hold your crypto, you do. And that's the difference. In a typical centralized exchange, the exchange holds your crypto. In a decentralized exchange, you maintain and keep possession of your crypto. And this is where SBTV went to Switcheo headquarters to speak to Jack Yu, co-founder and CCO of Switcheo. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Today, as you can see, we're on location once again with Jack Yu, co-founder and CCO of Switcheo, a Singapore-based company, which is the first decentralized exchange on the Neo blockchain. Jack, thank you for being here today, and how are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Patrick. I'm doing great.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, we're glad you invited us over. If you don't mind, could you take us through the journey of how you got to this point, your background with crypto, the team that you assembled?
Right. So I actually started reading into crypto in about 2012, but never really bought much into it until last year. So my co-founders and I were working on a previous a different project, and we kind of met there. So all of us invested in crypto, and we invested in various ICOs. So we, I came from a UI developer background, whereas my other two co-founders were more tech, more into tech, and they're doing various different technology stacks. So while we all invested in crypto, we all had different views on different cryptocurrencies, and one of the common things that we had was all of us invested in Neo at a really early stage, back when it was N shares. So we followed the project for a really long time, and we followed up to the point where Neo launched, well, the first ICO launched on Neo, which was at that point Red Pulse. So we all participated in the Red Pulse ICO, but we realized, that we couldn't really sell these tokens because it took really long for these tokens to get listed on any of these centralized exchanges that we trusted. So at that point, we decided to build a decentralized exchange, and City of Zion at that point was running their first DApp competition, so that further incentivized us to build a DEX. Yeah, that's kind of how we started actually.
What got you started off in the crypto space? What got you interested in the crypto space?
So my friend was buying things off the dark web with cryptocurrency. So that kind of sparked my interest in cryptocurrency. So this was a friend from school, and when he told me about that, I asked him straight away, like, how do you make sure you don't get caught? So he was saying he used this thing called Bitcoin. So I was really intrigued, like, oh, what is Bitcoin? How do you not get caught by using Bitcoin on the dark web? So that kind of made me read a lot more about cryptocurrency and became interested in cryptocurrency. So after I got introduced to Bitcoin, I got introduced to more anonymous coins like Monero, Zcash, and all the different interesting ways to buy interesting things of interesting websites.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved in crypto in the first place.
For people who may be new to cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, how would you explain Switcheo to them?
So compared to like an exchange where everyone else is used to, like your traditional stock exchanges or traditional crypto exchanges, centralized exchanges, a decentralized exchange like us, we don't actually hold the users' funds. We are a non-custodial exchange. So the difference is that while our trades are, how it looks like and how the trades are performed looks similar to a centralized exchange, the difference is that we don't actually hold the user's funds. So the funds are always in the user's control, within the user's control, and every time they execute a trade, the tokens doesn't actually transfer to us, but it's transferred peer-to-peer to other users. So we don't actually hold any of the funds, and that's kind of the main differentiator compared to other exchanges.
So, Jack, given that my tokens, let's say, are never on your exchange, how do you facilitate the trade?
So when you want to execute a trade, you have to as I mentioned previously, you need to have your wallet balance and your contract balance. So you need to transfer your funds into your contract balance, similar to IDEX, and then you can do the trade execution on our exchange, and then you can withdraw your funds from our contract balance. So the contract balance is the funds in the contract balance are not within our control; they're within the user's control. That's kind of why when we swap contracts, like the past few times, we have to get our users to withdraw it from their contract themselves, because we don't actually have access to these funds in the smart contract. It's all within the user's control, and Switcheo doesn't have access to these funds.
So besides the problem of trying to get listed on an exchange, what other issues did you set out to tackle with Switcheo?
Right. So we saw that other crypto exchanges were getting were being prime targets for hackers, because there's these massive crypto exchanges were holding so much money.
Right.
So since the start of this year, for example, there's been over $1 billion that was stolen from crypto exchange hacks. So one of the key things that we wanted to address was security in major exchanges, and we wanted to go back to the ethos of cryptocurrency. So if you remember what the first sentence of the Bitcoin white paper was, it said something like a peer-to-peer version of electronic cash that allows for the transfer of funds without a financial institution. So that's kind of the ethos that we want to stick to, transferring the transfer of funds peer-to-peer without a centralized third party.
Your vision falls in line with what the original vision of Bitcoin was,
yes,
or
correct.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yes.
Last year, 2017, pretty phenomenal year with cryptos, had a nice run up.
Yeah.
A lot of people enjoyed it. But what would you say are the main differences, or a few more differences between Switcheo and other exchanges such as Binance or Coinbase?
So for Switcheo, the nature of our exchange is a decentralized exchange. Besides the points that I mentioned that we are more secure, and we focus a lot on being decentralized. The other different factors is that we don't charge for listing. So Binance is known to charge millions for listing, and we want to list every token for free. So that's kind of one of the differentiators, that we want to be able to be the exchange where you trade all the different assets. So, and we also want to do so in a very inclusive manner where everybody can perform these trades. So we want to keep to the decentralized nature where everybody can access the exchange and trade on it. Yeah.
When I trade on the Switcheo platform, technically, do I own my crypto, or does Switcheo own the crypto?
The tokens are completely in your control. You're connecting your wallet to trade on our exchange. So the funds are completely in your control when you trade on our exchange, within your wallet, actually.
With regards to transaction speeds and cost, how do they differ compared to existing centralized exchanges?
Right. So actually, currently we are doing order matching on our off-chain servers. So right now, there isn't actually much difference in terms of transaction speed. Like if you're referring to like order matching compared to centralized exchanges, because we're using almost the same order matching as your major centralized exchanges. However, if you're talking about withdrawal speeds, we are also much faster than these exchanges, because for Neo, because we currently build on Neo, so for Neo it requires one block confirmation for any of these withdrawals to be confirmed. So we don't actually require as much as Binance, which is like 15 to deposit your funds. You can do it almost instantaneously. Yeah.
Could you explain to us what you mean when you say that there's no single point of failure with decentralized exchanges?
Right. So centralized exchanges have exchange wallets where they hold massive amounts of funds. So if you look at Binance's Ethereum wallet, they have like 4 Ethereum wallets, and each of them holds billions of dollars of funds. Right. So if one of these wallets get hacked, all the users lose their funds. Yeah. And these things are not like impossible. You see like hacks that happen on Bitfinex. One of the more high-profile cases where Bitfinex actually took 30% of all their users' funds, and to repay, to cover for the losses on the exchange when the exchange got hacked. So these are prime examples of single point of failure. Whereas in Switcheo, because we don't actually hold your funds,
right.
The funds are always in the user's control, so there isn't actually a single point of failure.
And I also understand that Switcheo, you have your own tokens. Could I ask you what's the benefit to having these tokens, and what can we use them for?
Right. So for Switcheo token, we're using it quite similar to the Binance DNB model. So
right.
Switcheo tokens are actually used as a fee discount when used for trading fees on our exchange. So when users use Switcheo tokens to pay for the trading fees, we burn all of these tokens compared to Binance, who actually holds all their tokens.
What's the total supply of Switcheo tokens?
Right. So the total supply of Switcheo token was, we minted 1 billion Switcheo tokens.
Billion?
Yeah, 1 billion. During our ICO back in March, actually. Yeah.
With the billion tokens, how was the supply limit decided?
We wanted a sufficient amount of tokens for everyone to feel inclusive to participate in our exchange, to use our exchange. So that's why we decided on the 1 billion number.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that 10% of the Switcheo token supply was released to the public. Why 10%? Why just that number?
Actually, 75% was released to the public.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There you go.
Yeah, so 75% was released to public and private sale, okay, where 25% is held by the team. So the team tokens are actually held to incentivize our employees who are working on the exchange as well, and to incentivize all our team members to build a successful exchange.
We had Tone Bays on a few weeks back. He says pretty adamantly 99% of cryptos are scammy. What makes your token different? So not scammy.
So our token actually has a utility on an actual platform. So that's kind of an instant use case, because a lot of these tokens don't actually have a use case. They promise to have certain use cases, but yeah, if you look at the majority of utility tokens out there, they're supposed to be used on a platform that's yet to be developed. So that kind of, that means that they don't actually have a use currently. But for our token, we made it so like it has a use since day one. Right. So we did our ICO on 16 March, and on 31st March, which was 2 weeks later, we launched our exchange. So users are actually, our users were able to use their Switcheo tokens as a discount on fees almost instantly. Okay. Right after our ICO, actually.
His number, 99%, you feel that's a bit high, or is that about right? I mean, just in your general opinion.
No, I think that's about right, because a lot of these projects don't actually have any product, or they're. I mean, if you read a lot of these articles on Reddit and various different channels, you realize like a lot of these companies, they raise so much money and they spend all of it on conferences, on expensive cars, vacations.
Right.
So right now, crypto doesn't actually have like there isn't actually much regulation in this space, and there isn't anything to prevent people from just doing an ICO and running away with the money. So it's you do see projects that are blatant scams.
How do you handle your KYC, your know your customer, and your anti-money laundering?
Currently, we don't have any KYC or AML frameworks in place. Although we do want to implement decentralized KYC onto our platform so that our users can eventually trade security tokens. That's kind of the goal to build ourselves into. That's something that we're looking into, but you know, we're still looking into it. So yeah.
So, but when it comes to that point, when you're collecting information, does that become centralized anywhere?
Not really, because the whole trading is still decentralized. Like you still don't hold your funds even if we do KYC on the customers. But the requirements to list securities it kind of contradicts a decentralized exchange. That's why we're still looking a lot into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've heard last year especially, or earlier this year, Coinbase, they were getting some pressure from the US, specifically regulations and whatnot. How would that scenario play out with Switcheo if some US authority were to come to you and start putting pressure on you? Who's trading? How much are they trading? How much have they made?
So actually our idea is that we want to we're eventually going to host our exchange on IPFS, and we will move onto our own blockchain where people can participate as validator nodes. So that way, we have a truly decentralized exchange where people will host this exchange through IPFS, and no one government can take it down. Similar to like what BitTorrent or these people are actually doing. So we want to actually facilitate that kind of trade where you don't have to be worried about censorship or this is supposed to tie in with the idea of decentralization in the first place, right? Where no one government has actual control over like who can trade or who cannot trade, or what you can do and all these different things. But of course, we still have to stay compliant with laws in Singapore, especially to ensure that people are not money laundering with our platform. That's kind of why we're still deciding on whether we want to do KYC or not. Whether we are going to incorporate KYC frameworks on our exchange for all users.
But is it something you would? Is it better to implement it now on your own, or wait and see if it's a requirement later on?
So currently it's not really a requirement, but of course, when it becomes a requirement, we will have to do so. Yeah.
I hear this comment sometimes that Switcheo is dependent on NEO, and it needs NEO. It needs to get some tailwinds from NEO to pick up. What's your opinion on that?
Right. So we are not constrained to NEO. So we're currently going to launch our Ethereum DEX this month, and we're working on a cross-chain, on our own cross-chain blockchain, which was actually announced just last week. Yeah. So this cross-chain blockchain will actually allow for us to list most of the major blockchains, and it will allow for the cross-chain transfers that we've been talking about since our white paper actually. So that's kind of how we want to differentiate ourselves, that for users to be able to transact across different blockchains in a trustless way.
How successful do you feel you've been so far as number of users, numbers of transactions and such?
All right, I think we've been pretty successful. So at our peak, we had about 35% of all NEO tokens traded on our exchange.
Okay.
So, and we had about $3 million in $3 million USD in daily volume. But that was back in July. And right now, because of the drop of NEO volume and everything, we took a pretty big hit as well. So we hope that with our Ethereum launch, we will get to the same level of volume as of back then, actually. So yeah.
What other tokens right now are traded on Switcheo?
We have 25 other tokens.
25.
Yeah. So
still growing, huh?
Yeah.
Jack, let us in on your plans. What do you have coming up in the next 12 months?
So we're kind of building our own blockchain, like you mentioned. So that's kind of to solve the interoperability issue between different blockchains, where we can transact from one blockchain to another in a trustless way. That's kind of what our team is focusing a lot of time and effort on. We're also launching a new UI with our Ethereum DEX. So that's to improve the user experience of the user when using our decentralized exchange, because we realized that a lot of users that are in the crypto space don't actually know much about decentralized exchanges, or find them just too scary and too difficult to use, because the decentralized exchanges that everyone is used to, like IDEX or EtherDelta, their user experience may not be the best. So that's kind of one of the spaces that we want to focus a lot of time and effort on the user experience of decentralized exchanges to encourage people to use decentralized exchanges instead. So that's kind of the main two things we're working on right now to bridge the gap between the centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges space.
Yeah, I think they will start using decentralized exchanges if they're not already doing so. But who would you say is your closest competitor in your space?
I think one of our closest competitors would be Binance, because they are the biggest exchange. So we don't actually want to pitch ourselves we don't want to compete with decentralized exchanges. We want to actually compete head to head with the large centralized exchanges like Binance and KuCoin, Huobi, because that's kind of where the real volume lies. We like as you mentioned in one of the previous questions, like we shouldn't be constrained by a single blockchain. We should be, and that's kind of our goal, to actually compete with major blockchains.
Okay.
Sorry, major exchanges.
What would you say is the dream right now for Switcheo, and what is Jack's dream?
Well, the dream for Switcheo is to be the #1 exchange in terms of volume. Yeah, and my personal dream is to be there to bring Switcheo to that kind of level, to that kind of success where we are the #1 exchange, the preferred exchange.
Your roadmap, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, but we had to delay our QTerm our QTerm listing, because QTerm we find that our team doesn't have sufficient knowledge on the QTerm ecosystem because of how QTerm is still at its infancy.
Sure.
Right? So their code is not really very mature yet to understand enough to build a decentralized exchange on. So we actually moved that. We moved Ethereum forward. So we're trying to build on Ethereum first now before building on QTerm. Yeah.
Could you let our viewers know how they can find out more about Switcheo?
You can subscribe to our newsletter. We actually post a lot of stuff that we don't post on our blog post, on our newsletter, and to kind of inform our communities on the updates that we have coming up, and our different activities that we're going to have. So that's the newsletter. Newsletter is pretty much the first place that people will find out about these news, and then you can also follow our Twitter or our Telegram and Medium page to understand more about what our project does, and all the news and exciting things that are coming up.
Well, Jack, we thank you for your time and helping to explain to our viewers Switcheo, what it does and how it can even benefit them. So we do appreciate your time, and we wish you all the best moving forward.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you for being here.
That was Jack Yu, co-founder and CCO of Switcheo.network, the decentralized blockchain. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the SBTV channel to be updated on our new content.